Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's just like I recharge by taking a break,
Right.
and getting my priorities straight and going back and setting those boundaries that I have broken because I've allowed, oh, yes, I'll do that. Oh, yes, I can do that. And I think sometimes I forgot my boundary. And it's like by the time it's done and over with, I'm just exhausted. And you know me, I mean, my exhaustion level is totally different than what it used to be because of my surgeries. But
Yeah.
I definitely feel it a lot more now, and it may be because I'm getting older as well. But I also think when I was reading this, I was like, giving more love, more attention, and more joy. I was like, from a place of abundance, not emptiness.
Yeah.
Because when you're on the go, you're just running yourself completely dry.
This week on Marriage, Life, and More, we're going to be getting into episode 2 of our series on Marriage Reset. We'll be back with that right after this. Welcome to Marriage, Life, and More. This is a podcast about marriage, Bible, and book studies, and sometimes we interview people that have inspiring stories. I'm Daniel Moore, your host. I want to thank you guys for joining us again this week. If you're not familiar with our show, check out our website at www.marriagelifeandmore.com for our platforms. Our YouTube and Rumble links are there. We're also on the Christian podcasting app Edify, and we're also on your Alexa and Google smart devices. You can also visit us on social, on Facebook, Instagram, and X at CT Gap Online. If you're a fan of our show, please subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment on our platforms, give us a thumbs up or a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, and we'd be eternally grateful to you for doing that. Of course, once again this week, I have my gorgeous co-host in the studio with me, my wife, Michelle.
Hey.
And we have another really good episode, I think, coming your way. Last couple weeks here, we went through the first episode of our new series on Marriage Reset. And basically the whole concept behind this series is a lot of times married couples get into a rut and they kind of become more like a roommate than really like a soulmate. And they don't really act like spouses anymore. And there seems to be a lot of distance and a lot of things that takes place in those marriages. And sometimes when you get to that point, it's really hard to restore that back. And so we're put this series together to try to maybe help with those issues. And this is going to be another 2-part series for this episode. So we'll do half of the episode this week, and then we'll pick up next week with the second half. But we'll go ahead and get started. This week, our episode is entitled, The Hidden Cost of Marital Exhaustion.
Life feels faster, busier, and more hectic. It's as if something or someone is conspiring to keep us exhausted and damage our marriages, once frenzied, moment at a time. It reminds us of a story written by Geraldine Harris and Kristen Maddox about Satan's reworked plan to steal, kill, and destroy. Satan called a worldwide convention. In his opening address to his demons, he said, "We can't keep the Christians from going to church. We can't keep them from reading their Bibles and knowing the truth. We can't even keep them from biblical values. But we can do something else. We can keep them from forming an intimate, continual experience with Christ. If they gain that connection with Jesus, our power over them is broken. So let them go to church, let them have their Christian lifestyles, but steal their time so they can't gain that experience with Jesus Christ. This is what I want you to do. Distract them from gaining hold of their Savior and maintaining that vital connection throughout their day." "How shall we do this?" asked his demons. Keep them busy with the non-essentials of life and invest unnumbered schemes to occupy their minds, he answered. Tempt them to spend, 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 then borrow, borrow, and borrow. Convince them to work 6 or 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day, so they can afford their lifestyles. Keep them from spending time with their spouse and children. As their families fragment, soon their homes will offer no escape from the pressures of work. Overstimulate their minds so they cannot hear that still small voice. Entice them to keep the TV, computers, tablets, smartphones, video games going constantly in their homes. Pound their minds with social media and news 24 hours a day. Invade their driving moments with endless choices of music, sports, and talk radio. Flood their mailboxes and email with junk, sweepstakes, and every kind of newsletter and promotion. Even in their recreation, let them be excessive. Had them return from their holidays exhausted, disquieted, and unprepared for the coming week. When they gather for spiritual fellowship, involve them in gossip and small talk so they'll leave with their souls unfulfilled. Let them be involved in evangelism, but crowd their lives with so many good causes that they have no time to seek power from Christ. Soon, they will be working in their own strength, sacrificing their health and family unity for the good of the cause. It was quite a convention, and the demons went eagerly to their assignments.
So the question is here, after reading that little story, has Satan's plan worked?
Yes, it has.
Satan's plan has worked.
Yes.
I think even as Michelle and I was looking through this episode, it's easy for us to even look at ourselves and see, how busy we are. And, we have to be super careful with how we align our schedules and all the different things that we have going on in our lives. And, the question there, has Satan's plan worked? Well, it certainly seems to be. It certainly seems like it is working. We find ourselves caught up in a whirlwind of modern life, constantly moving, endlessly busy. Our schedules are brimming with worthwhile pursuits, such as careers, raising children, school events, household chores, hobbies, fitness routines, volunteering, spiritual commitments, social gatherings, and extended family obligations. And within themselves, all of those things don't really seem bad.
No.
I mean, that's kind of how, so goes life.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those things are just incorporated into parts of life and just the way things go. Yet, despite these seemingly positive engagements, we feel depleted and overwhelmed. There is a force working tirelessly to keep our minds scattered and our lives overcrowded, quietly convincing us that staying busy with quote-unquote meaningful activities is the best use of our time. And I know that a lot of times when I think about the things that we do, probably, I don't know, what would you say, about at least 80% of what we do in our life is probably things that we consider important.
Yeah.
Things that we feel like we have to do on a daily basis to make our lives work. But even those good things can be bad in excess.
Yes.
If we're not careful.
Yes.
And we admit how drained and anxious that we feel. Society often responds with little compassion, telling us that we chose this space and it should simply just get tougher. Quit being a whiner and suck it up, buttercup. Many of us live in fear of letting others down or appearing inadequate.
I think that would probably be mine, more of living in fear of letting others down.
The pressure there to please others.
Yep.
And especially if you have a good work ethic, there's a generation that we've come from that works hard.
Yeah.
And we do care about what our bosses think, our workplace, what they think about our performance while we're doing our jobs. And, being parents, we want to make sure that we do the best that we can and, just pour into our kids. Everything that we do, I know
It could go.
From my experience, it seems like a lot of people in our generation, they want to make sure they do the best they can at everything that they do.
I was going to say it's everything. It's not just one thing. It's, whether it's a job, being a wife, being a nana, serving. I mean, anything and everything. I feel that sometimes of, I don't want to let anybody down. But at the same time, it kind of burns me out.
Yeah.
And I burn out and just like, okay, I'm letting myself down.
And, and what's bad, and we'll probably get into this a little bit later probably, but what's bad about that too is we always want to make sure that when we get into that burnout stage, we always want to make sure that we keep our responsibilities up to the people on the outside of our sphere, because we always want them to see the better part of what we think, what we want them to think that our life is. And that makes the inside suffer, which is where our marriage is. It's where our family's at. And a lot of times we find ourselves, I think, sacrificing the home relationship, the marriage relationship with the kids and your immediate family. We sacrifice that a lot to make sure it looks good out here. It's that, what you might want to call the Facebook effect or Instagram effect, how everybody always puts their greatest highlight reels online and makes it look like everything's perfect. And, a lot of times I think we do that just because we don't want to let people down that rely on us, that, we want to look good to them with everything that we do. And so, I agree with you on that. What we do when this type of thing happens, we silence our burnout, telling ourselves to keep going and ignore the signs of wear.
Yeah.
Rather than learning healthy rhythms for rest and reflection, we tend to repeat the example we saw growing up. Parents constantly on the go, existing in the same tired and overloaded life. So we continue weary and detached, functioning more like machines than people. And I know with my situation, and I think I've mentioned this before on some podcast episodes that we've done, my dad, from the whole time that I remember, for the most part, he always worked 2+ jobs. Sometimes he had 3, and I know one time he had 4. He had several part-time things going on. He owned his own business, and then he had a full-time job. And, when I grew up, we still were tight. It's like he worked all of that time and made the paychecks and everything. But I still remember, getting an ice cream cone at McDonald's or getting a Happy Meal was a luxury back then, And I guess, when I grew up, I don't know if I do have a strong work ethic within myself, because I'll work multiple jobs and I'll push myself and push myself and push myself to make that happen. And that's happened even within our marriage, where I've had multiple jobs. And sometimes I wonder if, because I see other people that do that and they just can't handle it. And they just never, they just always, they'll start something that's extra, but then they don't last very long because
that would be me.
They get tired of it.
It's not that I would get tired of it. My body gets tired.
Whatever reasons may be. But, I myself, I know with my personality the way I am, I'll just keep pushing myself through it if I'm exhausted or not. And that could possibly be coming back from my childhood, watching my parents, because we do bring a lot of that into our marriages sometimes. But the problem is the suck it up strategy is not working. Pushing past our tired bodies and weary hearts only deepens that strain. It just makes it worse. More and more people are skipping breaks, working extended hours, juggling multiple jobs just to keep up, and they're putting off retirement, way past retirement age. That's probably going to be me, probably. Daily responsibilities seem endless, running a household, raising kids, keeping up with errands, and staying socially active. Many of us fall into patterns of overconsumption, going into debt for things we think will bring us happiness. As parents, we genuinely want the best for our children, so we overschedule them with sports, lessons, activities, and those really high expectations.
Yep.
Commuting takes up hours of our week. We chase comparisons, striving to keep up with our neighbors' pristine lawns or upgraded vehicles. Our calendars are overcrowded. We struggle to keep track of appointments, miss deadlines, and live in a constant rush. Our phones keep us tethered to demands, never allowing for a mental or emotional break. Meanwhile, social media paints a picture of flawless lives, leaving us feeling inadequate as we scroll through filtered perfection. And I kind of smile because the part there about the lawns, we've had 2 neighbors in a row that we compete with all the time on our yard.
They hear you say that.
Yeah, if they hear us, they're going to, I don't know if they listen to our podcast or not,
They're
but
great
funny
people.
because they love to mow. I don't think I can.
They just take pride
I can't say
in
I
their
love to
yard.
mow that much. Yeah, I know. We always tease about it. It's like, man, they just must love riding on that mower, But we'll, they'll mow twice, and then ours looks like a jungle. So I have to get out there and to mow mine, make it look the same. But yeah, it's, little stuff like that. It's things you have to do. I mean, It's not, you can't just let your yard grow, obviously. But that becomes, it's not, I want to say it's a competition, but it's just something that, it's something else that just keeps you going.
Yeah.
With something else to do.
And there's just so much that you have to do to keep going because it is something you have to do.
Right. So we understand that bonding with our partner is important. And so on this part of it, we promise date nights or romantic weekends. But what happens more often than not? Those plans just remain ideas. And how many times have we done that?
Yep.
And a lot of you out there listening's probably done that. We desire excellence in every role, whether professional, parental, relational, or spiritual. But we're constantly pursuing ideal versions of ourselves is wearing us down. The drive for perfection comes at a cost. Our bodies are taxed, our spirit is discouraged, and our relationships suffer. Life becomes so crammed that there's barely any space left to breathe, let alone connect. But not all exhaustion arises from overcommitment by choice. Some stages of life come with built-in burdens, such as caring for young children, starting a new job, managing a serious illness, or taking care of an elderly parent, raising a child with unique needs. These aren't things we can drop from our schedule, yet they leave us drained at the same time.
Yeah.
Thinking back over this last several days, those of you that are listening out there, did you feel overwhelmed? Did your calendar leave little room for rest? Did stress or fatigue follow you to bed? Feeling constantly behind is normal for many, but the question remains, is this way of living actually helping? And my wife's over here raising her hand on every question that we just asked here.
Sorry, guys.
I think we're all affected. I don't think any of us are immune from having
And I think it's just
all of this going on.
Seasons of life at times.
Yeah. Well, the cost of keeping up the pace is steep. Nonstop tasks, they lead to rushed relationships, which in turn lead to depleted, disengaged people. There's a powerful visual in Chinese language where the word for busy is made up of two characters, heart and killing. A life of chronic busyness slowly kills off what matters most: our inner vitality, our connection to God, our marriage, and the emotional presence that we owe our children. When our hearts are barren, our relationships pay the price.
Yeah.
We can't pour into others if we're running on fumes. So what's the fix? Do we just push through and try harder? That's not really the solution. This isn't about better time management or fitting more into your calendar. Our focus isn't on doing less either. The true transformation comes in learning to give more love, more attention, more joy, but from a place of abundance and not emptiness. It starts with finding a rhythm of life that allows your body to rest and your heart to thrive.
When I first read that, I was kind of like, oh yeah, I think the solution is just, doing less and just, focusing on God and taking time to yourself, instead of go, 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 you have that downtime. And when I read this, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's just like I recharge by taking a break,
Right.
and getting my priorities straight and going back and setting those boundaries that I have broken because I've allowed, oh, yes, I'll do that. Oh, yes, I can do that. And I think sometimes I forgot my boundary. And it's like by the time it's done and over with, I'm just exhausted. And you know me. I mean, my exhaustion level is totally different than what it used to be because of my surgeries. But
Yeah.
I definitely feel it a lot more now. And it may be because I'm getting older as well. But I also think when I was reading this, I was like, giving more love, more attention, and more joy. I was like, from a place of abundance, not emptiness.
Yeah.
Because when you're on the go, you're just running yourself completely dry. It's a difference than from an abundance.
Yeah.
So I was reading that and I just kept going back to it. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. I'm not sure that I've ever seen it this way.
Yeah. And coming up, it's probably going to be in next week's episode, but we will get to how we get that abundance. Because I know right now, as everything that we've just covered here, that's us. I mean, we're all sitting here thinking, oh my goodness, that's me. I relate to that, you know? I mean, this is my life right now as we speak. And me and you have talked about this several times. You know, you're in your upper 40s, I'm in my lower 50s, and we both at one point in our life thought that when we got older and our kids got out of the house and we didn't have all this stuff going on all the time, that our lives would slow down.
That was a lie.
Oh my goodness. I don't know what happened. I mean, it's just, we just talked about this the other day of several times. We've talked about several people about it, but the month of July,
we didn't even know what we did.
It just flew by.
I mean, and just like, I can't even believe what day we're on in August.
Already a week into it. Yeah.
I feel like we're so busy that we just lose track of everything. And I fell over because I'm like, what did we do in July? Like,
it was a blur.
It was. And I don't like that, you know, because I'm just like, but at the same time, I mean, obviously we're, you know, moving along because here we are.
Yeah.
Which I got to make this comment. You guys are going to hear this in a couple of weeks, but we do have a new grandbaby.
Yes.
That's kind of taken a little bit of our time, so.
Well, actually, 2 episodes ago, I think we were talking about our family. We said we had 3 grandchildren and 1 on the way at any moment. Well, that's happened. We have our little granddaughter, and so we have 4 now. And, you know, it's just crazy when not even just 10, 15 years ago, you know, that stuff just wasn't on our radar.
No.
You know?
No.
But I think the whole key to this whole thing is, you know, is as we read through all of this stuff and we read this description of our lives and really how we feel right at the moment, just the exhaustion and all the things that takes place that takes up all of our time, you have to think a lot about priorities, really, because all of that can be overwhelming and it can definitely warp your priorities when it comes to where does your marriage fit into all of this, you know, because especially, you know, like us, we've got another granddaughter now. So now that's 4 grandchildren that we're going to be spreading our attention to. Then we have our kids, we have our church family, we have our actual, you know, immediate family, we have our work family, have our friends.
It's
you know, you just, as you get older, honestly, I think as you get older, that big bubble of life that you know gets bigger. It just continues to grow. And when that happens, because the longer you go, the more people you get to know, the more friends you make. You know, that's just the way life runs. And so there has to be a balance there. We have to be careful because, as the title of this episode says, you know, there can be marital exhaustion in your life if you don't take care of things like you should. And make sure that you keep your priorities in the right place and make sure that you protect your marriage. And that kind of comes into putting those hedges in place, those boundaries in place in some places that are healthy.
Yeah.
Like we talked about here over this, you know, about a month ago, we went through several episodes on that. Those boundaries are very important sometimes.
So why do I always break them? I wouldn't say always.
We had an episode on that.
I know. Sorry.
I think you're the one that wrote that episode, weren't you?
I'm just like, I was thinking the other day, I'm like, for the next several weekends, we have our granddaughters due to our son's surgery and our daughter-in-law working. And I'm like, how did we get into this? Like, there's 3 of them from the age of 5 to 10 months old. And I'm not used to that.
Yeah.
I'm not used to it, but I'm like, you know, we set boundaries to where we always take some time to ourselves. And I'm like, there's not one weekend that we have to ourselves.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be a while before we're going to have any alone time necessarily.
Yeah. And I'm just like,
with ourselves, we're going to have to be really creative.
I'm like, why did I allow that? Like, you know, I mean, I should have, you know, like, you need to find somebody else, you know, and because this is our time, you know, and I didn't do that. And this Nana here is second guessing her boundary that she, I think any Nana would do it.
Yeah.
I mean.
And it's okay. I mean, it's just a season. But the thing is, with us, and this is, I think, the whole point of this episode, is you have to make sure that even though you have all this stuff going on, you just got to make sure you're intentional.
Yeah.
You and I are going to make it through this fine because we've been there, done that, and we know what happens if we start ignoring signs and start just letting things, get the best of us. We try not to let that happen anymore. And
nope. And I would say we're pretty good about that.
Yeah,
because...
and everything that we do it together for the most part. And it's just a rhythm in life that you have to figure out and understand how that works. And it brings us here to a story about myself. When I was a young boy, my parents made me play the piano, and I put made there because I did not want to play the piano. It was a painful part of my childhood. When my friends were outside playing after school, I was stuck sometimes practicing on an old rickety piano. Well, Robin Woody, he was my instructor. He was a kind and patient guy who had to endure 30 minutes of me whining every Wednesday afternoon at practice. Aside from the trauma of missing precious playtime with my friends, about all I remember from Mr. Woody's lessons was his metronome, that pyramid-shaped wooden contraption with the long metal bar that swings back and forth and makes a clicking sound. I was certain his metronome was some medieval device used to hypnotize young boys into practicing the piano. It didn't really work on me, but at the time, I had no idea that Mr. Woody's metronome was teaching me a powerful lesson well beyond that piano. Musicians, if you're any type of musician out there, or even if you're related to one, you probably know what a metronome is. Musicians have used metronomes for centuries to help them develop a strong sense of rhythm and tempo. A metronome produces a steady beat that lets us know if we are slowing down or speeding up while we're practicing. Helps us stay on the same beat that we're supposed to be keeping steady. Musicians are free to think about other things in music, such as phrasing and dynamics, because the metronome there keeps them in line. Well, Mr. Woody was trying to teach me to play with the right pace, to know how fast or slow to play a song. He was using his metronome to force me to pay attention to time. Well, later in life, I became a drummer, and the metronome was a must-have with my drumming. When I was on the praise team at the last church that I attended, we had a click, and I ran that click through every song that we played, and that click was in everybody's ears on that stage. And so that helped, because typically if you don't have that click, the drummer has to pull if the singer starts singing too fast or the rest of the band starts playing too fast, the drummer's the timekeeper. So the drummer has to pull the band back and get it back on time so that you're not just blazing through a slow song or you're not, cremating a fast one, And so with that click in the ear, that takes a lot of the work off the drummer at that point, because everybody just follows that click. You start singing too fast, you're going to know it because you're outrunning that click. And so, just like musicians rely on a steady beat to stay in sync, we need an internal rhythm to guide the flow and pace of our lives. There is a force that thrives on keeping us moving too fast, wrapped up in chaos and constant activity, wearing us down until we're too exhausted to focus on what really matters. But we weren't created to live that way. God designed life with intention and rhythm, where rest, purpose, and connection come together. Earlier, you read that story, and that was the whole purpose of that convention that the story was about. Satan was wanting to get his demons out there to disrupt that timing in everybody's lives, to make chaos. If you have 5 people clapping their hands to the same song, but they're all clapping to a different beat, that's going to sound horrible. That just doesn't go together. And that's what Satan wants for us in life. He wants us to just be chaotic and not have anything put together. Because when he can accomplish that, then it puts us in a position where instead of us keeping our eyes on God, like we should be with our marriage and our families and all those kinds of things, we end up just running in circles all the time, trying to catch up with ourselves. And then the exhaustion comes in, which we know what it's like when we're exhausted. Things that mean a lot to us, all of a sudden, we're just too tired to deal with it anymore. We want to sleep. We want to rest, want to get away from everybody. And that's not a good thing when it's your marriage or your spouse or your family life that you're trying to stay away from. But that's how Satan wants it.
Yeah.
He wants to bust that up. Author John Ortberg once shared a moment when he asked his spiritual mentor how to grow closer to God. The simple but powerful response was, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. That's all he told him.
That's good.
That advice still holds deep truth. Living constantly overwhelmed, anxious, exhausted, joyless, stressed out, depressed, worn down, overloaded, hurried, bitter, burned out, resentful, and empty lives because it keeps us from the living out his greater commandments, which is to love God and others, and it ultimately hinders our marriages as we become weary roommates. That lifestyle keeps us from loving fully both God and those closest to us. When we live at an unsustainable pace, our marriages suffer. We become like ships passing in the night, physically present, but emotionally disconnected.
Yep.
And as I've talked many times, I can vividly remember when we were ships passing in the night. And some of that was because, when we were talking about the 4 laws of love and we was talking about the order in the home, there for quite some time, we put the kids in front of ourselves and we ran ourselves ragged.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to keep up with everything that they had going on. And we had a season there that me and you wasn't really connecting very well. It's like all we were concerned about was where's the kids going to be next. That's all our conversation and our life, everything was built around the next event that one of our children was going to be at. Or, we were even coaching at that time when the kids weren't doing traveling stuff. We were coaching it. And that's a good thing. You want to be a part of your kids' life and you want them to do the things that they're talented to do. And you want to be a part of family life.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But there comes a point where you got to be careful.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then all of that becomes a priority. Then you forget, me and you. And the spouses, they start not paying attention to each other. So the kind of marriage that most people dream about doesn't come from surviving on empty. It takes fully engaged hearts to build lasting love. Yeah. Love blossoms from a heart that's full. Deep connection requires emotional stamina. Romance and desire need physical and mental energy. Closeness develops through intentional effort. Joy and playfulness come from a place of rest. Offering grace takes endurance. Extending forgiveness calls for inner strength. These things are available and possible in a healthy marriage, but none of them thrive in a life that's racing at full speed with a soul that's weary and depleted. Jesus emphasized the importance of wholehearted love when someone asked him to name the most important commandment. That was, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. That's Mark 12, 30 and 31. Love is meant to be our core calling. God's desire is for us to love him deeply and to extend that same care and compassion to those around us with our full hearts, minds, and lives. Jesus made it clear that the most powerful evidence of our connection to him is in how we love others. That's in John 13, verses 34 and 35. If that's true, it becomes clear that people who are drained, worn out, and running on empty will struggle to love in the way that God intends. Somewhere along the way, Christian culture began to twist the greatest commandments. Instead of loving God and others as we love ourselves, the message subtly shifted to loving God and others at the expense of ourselves. But that's not what we're called to do. The truth is we can't pour into others when our own well is dry. We can't reflect God's love if we haven't taken the time to receive and refill it ourselves. We can't give what we really don't have. I know with you, we've talked about your medical situation that you've had in the past, which has made it a challenge for you to keep your stamina, your energy levels, those types of things. elevated. And so with you being busy a lot of times, you're exhausted a lot.
Yeah.
You're tired a lot. We can get a full night of sleep, technically.
I don't know if
and
I
you
sleep
feel
all
like you
night.
don't get a full night of sleep, But as we talked about earlier, you and I have been through a lot, and we've kind of figured out how to work around that and make sure that we're intentional. And so since that time that you've had your surgeries and this life change has happened with you, what are some driving forces in your life really that makes you want to make sure that no matter how tired you get, no matter how exhausted you are, that you're still intentional with our relationship, with the home, with the church, God's relationship that you have with God, your friends? What's some things that you've changed in your own life that, kind of helps you with all of that?
I think it really comes down to the way I look at it. It's dependent on, the way I perceive things. And, if God says for me to do this, and I'm going to do it because he's the one that gives me strength, not me. And he knows where I'm at. He knows how I feel. And so that's the way, I kind of look at it in all ways of like my marriage. He's placed you, he's placed my family, my friends, my job. He gives me the supernatural strength to do it. And so that's the way I kind of look at it more now than what I used to. And I just go before him. Hey, my body's tired. My mind's tired. I need you. If this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And, even when we record podcasts, sometimes you can tell. But I'm like, there are times that I know that God's going to go before me and use the words. He does every time, but there are times that where I'm just exhausted. But he always gives me the strength. And I rely more heavily on him than myself.
Yeah. And that's very important. And I think, too, that one thing that you and I have also figured out to a point is I can read you pretty well and you can read me pretty well. And so when I know that you're getting super exhausted, then I'll try to step up and try to help whatever you need to try to take some of that load off, and vice versa. You'll do that for me as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another lesson that we learned the hard way as we was going through a lot of the things within our marriage. And, if there's couples out there right now that are struggling with that, one spouse being exhausted and the other one just full of energy, but they don't seem to want to help, might want to think a little bit about how you operate with each other. Because as we talked about before, these relationships are 100-100, right?
Right.
They're not 50-50. They're not 75-75. That the 50-50 thing, I've heard that said before, but in all reality, that's not true. That's not how that works. It's 100-100. And so what I bring to the table, I need to make sure I bring 100%
Absolutely.
of who I am to you. Anything that you need, any support that you need, I need to be that support system that will help lift you up when you're having some bad low times in your valleys. And then that's what you bring to the table from your side as well. And in that fashion, we both help build each other up.
Can I make a comment? As I'm sitting here and I'm just going to kind of tell myself, in part of the relationship too, I feel like there's probably wives out here that probably are going to either agree or disagree, but I feel like you are the one that steps in more than what I do to help because of everything I've been through. And I always feel like it's one-sided. So there are not as many times that you ask or I can tell that you've got something going on, just simply because you have it all together for the most part. So I'm telling on myself. But it's very interesting how it flip-flopped, you know. I want to say previously it was you were always gone, you were working, I did it, did a lot. And now it's kind of opposite. And that's been really hard for me as a wife, because I was raised as the wife does everything. take care of the household, you take care of the husband, you do everything. You clean,
Cook my tacos.
Yeah. And it's kind of got sometimes when I think about Dan and I think about, man, I'm spoiled. I'm spoiled rotten, but it's really not that I'm spoiled. I mean, I still do my fair share of things, but it's in a season of life where he's really had to step up and, take care of me through my health issues. Mm-hmm. And so that's been hard. But I mean, how do you feel when you feel like it's more one-sided, or if, a husband or a wife and it is one-sided for a season?
Well, here's my take on this. Mm-hmm. You told your side and how you feel about it, but from my side of it, I still feel like you're giving 100%, because in this stage of life that you're in right now, with what you've had to go through, with the different surgeries and the different things, and if anybody's questioning what all that's about, there's an episode back, I don't know, a few months ago. I forgot how long ago it was.
And we didn't go all in detail.
We didn't go into a whole lot of detail, but yeah. But we did do an episode on what happened to you and what caused a lot of these issues. But I know you well enough that I know your limits. And I'm not going to make you push yourself past your limits any more than you want me to push myself past mine.
That's good.
Yep. And so whenever it comes into the marriage and it comes into the relationship between each other, I know that you're giving everything that you've got within you, within your boundary, to do your part in our marriage, which is quite a bit still. You're still very helpful and active in our marriage. It's not that you do a lot of stuff, but I do know what your limits are, and I can push myself a little further than what you typically can, and I'm okay with that because I know that you're doing your best, and that's what matters to me. And so I think that's what this is all about, and we'll get more into this next week on how we get into this rest side of things and how we recharge ourselves and how we fill those empty places up. We'll get into that next week as we wrap up this actual episode. But just kind of, at where we're at right at the moment in this discussion, husbands and wives out there, if you're fighting and struggling through this, where you feel like one person's doing more than the other, and, or maybe even like in our situation, Michelle feels like she's not doing enough, although I feel like she is. I think that what you have to do is just do your best. And if you truly know each other, like you should as spouses, as you get older and you're together longer, you're going to know each other better and better as time goes along. Yeah. And of course, we've been married a long time at this point, and we've been through a lot. We've been through some really tough junk. And through all of that, we've came to know each other quite well. And so I have no doubt in my mind that you're doing your best of your side of it. Therefore, I'm willing to give my 100% from my side. And that's what makes this thing work. When we have these negative feelings and these negative thoughts about our marriages because of how exhausted, how busy we are, how much stuff we have thrown into our daily lives every second that we're awake, this is exactly why Satan works so hard to keep you drained and distracted.
Yeah.
His strategy is subtle. Fill your time to the brim, overwhelm your mind with constant tasks, and push you to do everything except be still and connected to God. That's his whole goal, is to keep us from focusing on our Creator, the one who can destroy him. He wants to put enough stuff out there to distract us from that. The goal isn't always to make you sin outright, necessarily. Sometimes it's just simply to keep you too busy to notice that you're drifting away. We talked about the little foxes in a couple episodes ago, and that's how that works. The little things that Satan will do to try to distract you and take your mind off of what's important. And as those things pile up, eventually it becomes a bad situation. Yeah. And you start drifting away from what's important. He knows that a distracted, overextended life can slowly chip away at your spiritual strength and emotional well-being. Jesus, however, offers something entirely different. He didn't come just so that we could be saved for eternity. He came so we could experience richness, peace, and meaning right now, right where we live in this moment. He said, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. He said, I come that they may have life and have it more abundantly. That's John 10:10. Jesus desires for us to live fully and freely, filled with life, love, and purpose. He wants us rooted deeply in our connection with him so that we can in turn love others from a place of strength and wholeness, that well that springs out of us that we use to fill other people's purposes and to help them through things. All of that comes from a basis based on Christ, on our cornerstone. So here's the real question. Who's guiding the rhythm of your life? The one who seeks to drain you or the one who came to restore you? The good news is that God offers a path forward. The first step is to slow down and pay attention to your life's pace. Start by reflecting on two powerful questions. The first one, what genuinely brings you rest? And what revives your heart and renews your energy? That's the second question. In answering these, you'll begin to discover the rhythm that God designed for you, a pace that gives life instead of taking it. And that's going to wrap up this episode. We'll come back next week and finish this, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what brings you rest in your marriages, in your life, in these moments that you're trying to exist right at the moment. And then we're also going to talk about what it takes to revive your heart and renew that energy inside of you. You know, we've been talking that you have to do this stuff from an abundance. You have to do this stuff from a filling that's inside of you. And right now you're probably thinking, well, how in the world do I get to that point? You know, I'm like on my last thread. I just don't know what to do at this point. Well, we're going to talk about that next week. And we'll dig into the Word a little bit and see what it says as far as allowing God to come inside of us and to rebuild what we need to have back there. So is there anything else you want to add to this week's?
No, not this week.
Okay. Well, we'll come back next week and we'll finish up this episode. And as we go, we just pray that your marriage is stronger and your walk with God is closer after this episode. This is an extension of Connecting the Gap Ministries, and we pray that you have a blessed week.